I sleep for 2 days. 2 days. Yeah. No, yeah, but he told me come. It was when he saw me. I was and he gave me the pill. Drink this. Counting and certificate our
Could please invite the UN heads of agencies to join the resident coordinator here in the front, please. Our UN heads of agencies. Welcome everybody, and apologies for the slightly delayed start. But it is a beautiful moonlit evening. I think we can see the moon is full tonight in the spectacular setting on United Nations Day. Welcome on behalf of the United Nations in South Africa, on behalf of our host, our resident coordinator, Nardos Bekele Thomas, and on behalf of everybody that is involved in making multilateralism real. My name is Sudesh Reddy. I'm the communication specialist at UNICEF South Africa. We're one of the 17 UN agencies based in this country, and I'm delighted to be the program director this evening. It's a short, relaxed, informal program because it's not about speeches, it's about acknowledging the United Nations at 73 years old today. So welcome to all our partners that the United Nations works with as well. I'll start by, before we play the United Nations anthem, and yes, there is a United Nations anthem, and the South African anthem, we have the heads of the UN agencies here. So our resident coordinator has suggested that they introduce themselves. So if I can pass the mic around.
Good evening, my name is Beatrice Mutali. I'm the representative of the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA.
Good evening. My name is Sanjay Wijasekara. I'm the representative of the United Nations Children's Fund, also known as UNICEF.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cecilia Kinuthia Njenga. I'm the representative of the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Anne Githuku Shongwe. I'm the representative for the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment, UN Women. Unforgettable.
Good evening. My name is Walid Badawi. I'm the country director of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP.
And good evening. My name is Abigail Nuku. I'm the head of the Regional Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR.
Good evening. My name is Reda Amer. I'm the officer in charge for the International Labour Office.
Good evening, my name is Aden Elmi. I'm acting regional representative UNHCR, not UN Human Rights, UNHCR, UN High Commissioner for Refugees.
Good evening, my name is Simba Tafirenyika. I'm the director of the United Nations Information Center.
Good evening, my name is Richard Otts. I am the Chief of Mission of the International Organization for Migration.
My name is Carlo. I'm the WHO representative of the World Health Organization.
Good evening. I'm Senior Advisor and Officer in Charge UNAIDS. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a seat? Thank you very much, colleagues. Oh, Anne wanted to do a song. Did you want to do an item, Anne? Okay. So now you know who we are. Welcome, everybody. We will start with the United Nations anthem, which will be played now. will now have the anthem of South Africa.
Usisingeleni Afrika, maluphakanyiswa ukondolayo, izwa imithandazo yethu, Nkosi sikelela thina lusapho lwayo, luyena kuluka sitshaba sesu.
Thank you, everybody. As I said, it's not an evening of too many speeches, and a key partner of the United Nations in South Africa is the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO. And on that note, I would like to invite Mr. Cedric Crowley, Director of Economic Development at DIRCO, to say a few words. Cedric.
Good evening, everyone. I should start my intervention by saying that I will have to disappoint the Master of Ceremonies. You know, in multilateralism, there's a lot of contradictions. People start their statements by informing you that they'll be very short, and then they have long statements. Even informal meetings at the UN, at the United Nations, is not necessarily informal, and they are very formal. So do allow me, on behalf of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, to share with you a few words and on this auspicious day, the 73rd anniversary of the United Nations. So Program Director, Resident Coordinator, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Mpoko, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, heads of UN agencies, distinguished guests. I'd like to thank the Resident Coordinator of the UN Country Team for inviting me to deliver a few words on behalf of the Government of South Africa on this auspicious day. Let me also take this opportunity to congratulate the United Nations on its 73rd anniversary. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, South Africa firmly believes in multilateralism and the centrality of the United Nations in the system of global governance. We are meeting and gathering in a shifting and uncertain global context where the post-war, the Second World War world order is being challenged. This is characterized inter alia by a range of deeply troubling phenomena. These include growing inequality within and between states, with hundreds of millions of people worldwide suffering the impacts of poverty, unemployment, and underdevelopment. A decline in the means of implementation to support countries of the developing world in terms of meeting their 2030 goals, sustainable development goals, the ever more serious impact of climate change, natural disasters, and environmental degradation and pollution that are a grave threat to sustainable development. A decline in public confidence and trust in government, business, civil society, media, and other institutions, challenges to multilateralism and global institutions, and a rise of unilateral tendencies, a rise in populism, nationalism, as well as trade protectionism, and tension over strategic resources and geopolitical influence. These challenges are vast and transnational in nature, making it impossible for individual states to respond to them in any meaningful way. Even the most powerful states cannot achieve security and maintain prosperity and health for their people by acting unilaterally or in isolation. In this regard, multilateralism will continue to be a key aspect of international relations. Indeed, collective action with the United Nations in a central role is indispensable in a globalized and interdependent world. Excellencies, we recently attended the general debate of the 73rd session of the United Nations in New York. The theme of the debate was making the UN relevant to all people, global leadership, and shared responsibility for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. The general debate highlighted the vast difference and approach to international relations among member states today. In his opening statement, the General Assembly, the UN Secretary General spoke of the trust deficit disorder. He elaborated that within countries, people are losing faith and do not trust their governments. Despite the world being more connected than ever before, countries are cooperating less and nationalism is on the rise. He noted that today the world order is increasingly chaotic. Power relations are less clear and universal values are being eroded. In his inaugural address to the GA, President Ramaphosa challenged member states to resist efforts to undermine the multilateral approach to international relations. He reminded the GA that no country can prosper at the expense of all other, and that no people can hope to live in comfort and security for as long as millions of others are languishing in poverty. The President noted that to the poor, the vulnerable, and marginalized, the UN today is a beacon of hope, a promise in a landscape of doubt. To billions across the world, the UN is the most powerful instrument we possess to achieve a more equal, more humane, and more inclusive world. Excellencies, South Africa is honored to have been afforded the responsibility to serve once more as an elected member of the United Nations Security Council, where we undertake to be a strong and vocal voice of Africa and the developing world. We will advance the viewpoint that there will never be peace and security in the absence of development. In that regard, the right to development needs to be placed in the front and center of efforts by member states to rid the world of war and conflict. We believe that working with other member states, this opportunity to serve in the Security Council presents an opportunity for South Africa to play a meaningful role in continuing to strengthen the relationship between the AU Peace and Security Council and the UN Security Council. This should include member states' commitment to participation in women, peace and security, the rule of law at national and international level, post-conflict reconstruction and development, and the peaceful resolution of conflict. Excellencies, the overarching priority of the South African government is to address the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, and to fully implement the National Development Plan. To achieve this, We required the UN's ongoing support in this endeavor. South Africa therefore welcomes the Secretary General's initiative on repositioning the UN development system to deliver the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The UN country team is in a position to assist program countries to meet their national development aspirations and to fully implement the SDGs. These reforms must therefore contribute and bring us closer to the realization of the Charter commitment to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. We will have an opportunity to elaborate on this more in the seminar that will take place next week, and we look forward to that engagement. Excellencies, as we mark UN Day, all member states should take stock of the effectiveness of the UN and chart a way forward to improve the organization's efficiency and relevance by making it more democratic, more responsive, and more transparent. The reform of the UN Security Council remains an important task of all members to achieve and reflect the realities of the 21st century. We should be guided by the centrality of multilateralism to international peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights, including international trade, which is essential to the promotion of stability, predictability, and the global economy. Finally, and in conclusion, and I thank you in advance for listening so attentively. In conclusion, UN Day 2018 is commemorated against the backdrop of the celebration of Nelson Mandela's centenary. We are grateful for the UN's acceptance of South Africa's gift of a Nelson Mandela statue on behalf of the people of the world on the occasion of the recently concluded UNGA 73. We hope that the gift should be a constant reminder to the international community of the dedication of Nelson Mandela to the mission of the UN and a constant affirmation of South Africa's commitment to contribute to a better Africa and a better world. This occasion is also an opportunity to give gratitude to the former Secretary General, Kofi Annan, who passed this year, and who in his seminal report indicated the importance of the promotion of human rights, economic development, and security as interdependent, and that one cannot achieve either of them without giving sufficient attention to all of those pillars. So on this day, we congratulate the UN. We are very happy to be here with you and to celebrate 73 strong years, and we wish you continued success. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crowley, for that message of support and for being a strong partner of the United Nations. In addition to government, the United Nations agencies in South Africa have several bilateral engagements with the various diplomatic missions, and Pretoria is proud to have among the largest representation of diplomatic missions in the world, of any city. So we also have the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps here this evening, Ambassador Mpoko, who will say a few words as well for United Nations Day. Ambassador Mpoko.
Thank you, Program Director. My sister, Mrs. Nardos Bekele Thomas, the Resident Coordinator of the United Nations System in South Africa, colleagues, ambassadors, high commissioners, heads of the United Nations agencies, ladies and gentlemen. A few minutes ago, a charming young lady came to me and asked me if I would say happy birthday to the United Nations system today. But so I said, oh, if it's just a birthday, of course, I'll say it. But it looks like I had to say more than a happy birthday. Anyway, when UN at its current format was created, was founded in 1945, I think there was a need. There was a need for a dialogue. There was a need for the people of this planet to get together and exchange, find the ways of avoiding another World War II. Because the League of Nations, which is the agency that preceded the United Nations, was not able to prevent that. So it was necessary for nations of the world to come together and create an organization that will deal with that particular issue. As we look at UN today, its mandate has been far extended. I don't think in San Francisco in 1945 they were talking about human rights or development and so forth. The main concern was peace and stability of the planet Earth. But the representative of DIRCO has defined the challenges that UN is facing today, the issues that UN must tackle, and so forth. And it's a good thing that we have this organization, that we have a platform where if issues arise, whether it's development issues, human rights issues, and so forth, the issues that he described, there must be a platform where we get together and exchange and deal with them in order to find solutions. Now, has UN accomplished their mandate today? You might say it's this question of, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Because I will not venture to answer the questions of if the UN has fulfilled its mandate or not. Because some people are going to say that their glass is half full and others are going to say it's half empty. Who is right, who is wrong, we don't know. But one thing is sure, is that there is a platform for dialogue. There is a platform for exchange of knowledge, information, and so forth. The platform is called the United Nations. UN is a complicated organization. It's very complex. When you look at the agencies here, each agency, some of them were created independently, and they were brought into the UN. Some have their own board of, I don't see board of directors, but they have their own sponsors and so forth and so on. So it's a very complex organization. Because of the complexity of the structure of the UN, because of the complexity of the issues that UN has to deal with, a lot of people have been calling for reform of the United Nations. And I think those are calling for reform are right. Most of us here agree that the UN, the way it was founded, the entire planet has evolved. Therefore, UN has to evolve with it. You cannot remain in 1945 the way you were created when you're dealing with issues of the 21st century. So the institution itself has to undertake some reform so they can deal with not only the current issues, but do prepare to deal with the future issues that we are going to face as the population grows, as the world becomes more and more complex. It's a major challenge, and we need to deal with. Now, globally, UN deals with issues differently. We go to UNGA in September in New York and listen to speeches, and then agencies go home and deal with issues. But I like the way the UN is structured in on a country basis, because you have a resident coordinator and he has a colleagues, and they meet. This is the third time I think I'm meeting in the UN agencies under the direction of the resident coordinator. A structure which you don't have globally. Globally, they don't meet that often to deal with those issues. But the way it's structured on a country basis, I think there is a hope, because there is a coordinator who can unite, who can, in a very short period of time, call the colleagues and discuss the issues that they are facing. It's also important the host country must always support the work of the UN. They must be involved. Because we, in our respective countries, sometimes UN agencies, they go through frustrations, sometimes because of lack of support from the host countries. And I think that we are calling for the reform at the UN in New York and everywhere, but we also had to change as a host country the way we deal with the UN so we can lend them the support that they require. I will not go into the issues the UN agencies face, especially on the continent of Africa and maybe elsewhere, but there is a need for the host country to support this organization because we have no other platform except United Nations for the dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mpoko, on behalf of the Diplomatic Corps. And our last speaker is our host this evening, the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Ms. Nardos Bekele Thomas, who has been here less than a year, but has been very energetic and energizing. And we're very glad to have you with us. Thank you for hosting us this evening and to deliver a few remarks. In the meantime, snacks are being passed around. Please help yourself. There's drinks at the back, and then mingle and network for the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much. The United Nations was long enough, so it has covered everything. That is part of the reform agenda that we will be proposing to the Secretary General, a shorter version of that. Well, and also our member states have spoken. And what we do is normally execute what they do, what they give us as, resolutions and say, you go ahead and implement, we implement. So, the two speakers, our host country representative, our friend has spoken, then the Dean has spoken on behalf of all of you ambassadors. Thank you very much for coming. You have seen the colleagues. We have, it will be volume of reports that we can present if we want to, but today is not the day to do that. I think today is just to celebrate our achievements and to recommit and to say we are going to redouble our efforts in supporting our countries we serve. And therefore, I think my long speech was that one, okay? And my short speech is thank you very much for coming. Have a wonderful day, and let's see each other next year.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Resident Coordinator. The evening is free. You see, the UN doesn't just do long talk shops. That's the moral of the story. The United Nations Today 73, as Kofi Annan said, a flawed but noble organization. And to conclude with the statement of our Second Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld, the United Nations was not created to deliver mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. So there's hell happening in too many parts of the world, but we're working collectively with everybody, with all our partners tonight. So happy United Nations Day, and please enjoy the rest of this moonlit Jacaranda evening. Thank you.